We'll talk about the challenges posed by the concept of Englishes or different varieties of Englishes to the lexicographers. In order to undertake the task of compiling dictionaries, especially World Englishes dictionaries, the lexicographers need to find the answers to these questions, or need to find the answers linked with these aspects of English language right at the beginning, before they actually start compiling the dictionaries. These aspects include the notion of standard, the notion of variety, and also what is regional standard, what is regional variety, etc. So, unless the answers to these questions are answered, the lexicographers will not be able to do their job in a systematic manner. The sources of data for a lexicographer do not only include linguistic elements. The sources of data also include the cultural and political aspects of the lives of a language user. For example, it's not only how the user views the language, or what is the standard form of the language, so on and so forth, but also what is the place of the language in the culture in which the user of the language lives, or what are the cultural values of the learner where the word or the language will be used. Similarly, the political leanings of the user of the language, and also what is the place of the language in the language policy of a particular community or country. All these elements, all these aspects comprise the data for lexicographers. The difference between the standard varieties and emerging varieties, non-native varieties of English depends on how we view linguistic change. So, linguistic change, in a way, influences how we understand standard varieties and non-native varieties of English. We have linguists' view of change, and then we have linguistics, not only the linguist's view of the change, but also ordinary people's view of the change. So, linguists' view of change implies that all languages undergo a change. However, they consider this change a breaking away from the pure form of the language, or from the original form of the language. Linguistic change is not very welcomed by those who link their identities, their not only linguistic identities, but the ethnic, cultural identities with the language they use. So, in this way, the varieties, different varieties, both standard English varieties and non-standard English varieties, they are influenced by how people view linguistic change. The linguist's view of change, who view language, who view change as something normal, and the ordinary people's view of the change, who link linguistic change with their identities. Because of these two kinds of views of linguistic change, we have two different kinds of responses to linguistic change. One is a cool, scientific, calm response, and the other is very panicky kind of a response, which looks at linguistic change as a cause of alarm. So the cool, scientific, calm response comes from linguists who look at linguistic change as something normal, which cannot be stopped or avoided, despite the fact that they also think that linguistic change is likely to cause a little bit of corruption, decay in the language. And then the people who link their identities with the language they use, their response is that of panic and um, disturbance and unrest, etc., because they think that with the change in the language, with these linguistic changes, their ethnic, linguistic, cultural identities are also being threatened. The scientific response to change, by that I mean the the change, the linguist's view of the change, the linguist's view of the change, that is, the language is likely to break away from the original form, is as old as the 17th century and was expressed by many literary personalities and lexicographers. However, this concern about the threatening of the identities is a more current, contemporary kind of a response that we witness in our own times. So, the concept of Englishes makes the job of lexicographers a little more difficult because they have to understand the several factors which are behind the emergence of different varieties of English.